All right, welcome back here to Keon Sports. I'm your host, as usual, Vince McKee. Guys and girls out there, you remember a while back, I want to say actually about a year ago, right around this time, we had Ray Lloyd on the show. You guys remember him as Glacier, and then my favorite character, Coach Buzz Stern. But and during that episode, a lot of it we talked about was his wrestling career, but we touched quite a bit on the Unbreakable Bunch. And if you recall, the Unbreakable Bunch was a movie he was filming with guys like Zybsko, Haku, and a few others, which we're going to talk about here in a second. And I said, Ray, when that comes out, go ahead and give me a call. And sure enough, it comes out on the very day the Ohio high school football playoffs start as well. So you can't tell me that's not a cool coincidence. Ray, welcome back to the show, buddy.
Oh, man, thanks so much, man. I really appreciate you taking the time to have me on to promote the film and just chat, man. I know we were talking a lot about high school football before we went live, so and our passion for that. So yeah, thanks again, man. I really appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. So, like I said, we're gonna I know you're a busy guy, so we're gonna keep you in and out today. I have a couple of questions about the movie, and then I cannot resist. I have to monopolize your time. I will have one wrestling question at the end. So, but let's talk about the movie first. The Unbreakable Bunch. First things first, guys. Or first things first, Ray. How could people watch this right now?
You know what? That's a great thing to start with, Vince. Is like, how can they find it? We partnered with Gravitas Ventures, which is an amazing distribution company for independent film, and they negotiated some great partnerships with us. The main one that I think everyone pretty much has access to is Prime Video. And so if you have Amazon Prime, go to Prime Video and look for our movie, The Unbreakable Bunch. And but it's also on iTunes. It's on Apple TV. It's on Google Play. It's on Fandango at home, which Fandango, of course, is a huge ticket resource for if you go to any theater to watch films. So they have an at-home video streaming service set up. Any of the Microsoft outlets, and you can get it on YouTube, which now apparently YouTube is really taken off as a place where people rent and buy movies. We were getting our industry updates here about a month ago, and we were really excited to see that. I guess like Deadpool and Wolverine did great numbers, really comparable to the theater numbers on YouTube. So we're real happy that that's available to us. Vimeo, and so we're just and that's the ones that are kind of our main ones. If there's a streaming service that you have, because there's a whole long list of them, just check on there. Just check the Unbreakable Bunch movie or the Unbreakable Bunch, which is the title of the film. So, and it's on all the cable services. It'll be available on Spectrum, Dish Network, Armstrong, all the Xfinity, all of those. It's going to be available everywhere. So Comcast, Xfinity. So yeah, just if you go looking, I promise you'll be able to find somewhere that's either streaming it on streaming service or on one of the cable services.
So guys, here's the other thing too. Researching this movie and talking with Ray about it quite a few times now. To me, and I can't wait to watch it. This is literally going to be the next thing I do is watch this movie today. No joke. I really will. I can take a picture of myself watching it, so I'm just telling you. But one of the great things about this movie that, I liked from this explanation is that it is something for the whole family. Your wife could watch it. Your kids could watch it. It's nothing too gruesome. It just seems to me like a really fun movie. So I'm going to kind of sit back here and let Ray tell you all about it because, again, to me, it just seems like a fun, you don't have to overthink it kind of movie. It's not War and Peace.
Yeah, it's exactly. It's when we set out to make this movie, me, myself, and my co-producer, who's my longtime friend, Steve Luther Wilson, we met at the WCW Power Plant back almost 25 years ago. Well over 25 years ago now, and about 10 years ago, we started throwing around this idea of there isn't really a movie out there for the wrestling fan or anybody who loves wrestling. There's tons of people in the industry. There's not really a movie that shows the good, positive, fun side of wrestling as not only what happens in the ring, but what are these guys and girls like when they're not in the ring and they're, say, traveling on the road? And we've seen all the stories about the dark side of our industry, which every industry has a dark side, but we, there was never a movie that really showed, like I said, the really good, fun, positive side of our industry, and we really kind of, just trimmed it down to 3 words: camaraderie, friendship, and loyalty. There's never been a pro wrestling movie that displays that. And so the main reason we set out to make the movie is we knew that this is nothing against anybody else or any other branches of the entertainment industry, but because they haven't walked in our shoes, we just felt like they would never get that story completely right. So we felt like, okay, well, if it's gonna get out there, then we're gonna have to be the ones who do it. And so we started a long journey of putting the script together. And one of our really good friends, John Waterhouse, wrote the original screenplay, and then we kept kind of modifying that. We got our investor, one single investor who's been amazing, and then we actually started filming in 2019 November. So 5 years ago we started filming, and we got a good bit of principal photography done, and then the pandemic hit, and because we had such a huge ensemble cast and crew, we had to really take about a 2-year break and then come back and try to get everybody together and manage everybody's schedule to finish the film, which we did. And then we shopped it around for about a year to make sure we had could get the right partner, and we feel like we did with Gravitas Ventures. So, but yeah, the main things about the movie, Vince, that I always tell people that makes it different than most action sci-fi films that you're going to see. One, it's got a ton of pro wrestlers in it and a ton of pro wrestling. So that in itself sets it apart. But we wanted to challenge ourselves to make a movie where there's literally like no profanity in the movie. Like you said, a movie that literally the entire family can sit down and watch. I mean, the little ones, of course not, but anyone who's, a teenager, on up, should be fine, So, but it's one that has literally no profanity. We have no strong sexual content, no gross humor, which basically projectile vomiting and stuff like that. We don't have any of that because we challenged ourselves to make a movie that didn't lean on that stuff. Because to us, that's kind of the easy out.
Yep.
And also, we all grew up, Luther, myself, and literally so many people I know in the wrestling business, and I know you and I've had this conversation before, is, pro wrestling to me, when I always went to watch it with my dad or my buddies, it was always a family event. Everybody could go and enjoy it, and from the kids, grandkids to the grandparents. And so that's what we wanted to make. We wanted to make a movie where everybody could sit down and really enjoy it together. And I always say, there is gunfire and explosions in the movie along with a lot of great pro wrestling, but I always take it back to, if you were a fan of the A-Team in the 80s, the TV series, where there was a lot of gunfire and explosion. It's always say, you can have action without it being violent.
Yep.
And so in our movie, it's literally that same type of action. It's kind of the fun action of here these pro wrestlers who get thrown into a totally different world, and now they got to battle these aliens. So it's a real fun ride. There's 2 parallel stories that the audience sees, which is one of us getting back together as a veteran group of wrestlers to go on this tour to help raise money for a good friend of ours. And it's one of those ticking clock scenarios where we got to raise this amount of money by this amount of time. So there's a sense of urgency. But the audience also sees a parallel story of this alien presence crashes in this small Florida town, and it starts to slowly take over the town. Eventually, we stop off in this town on our tour on the day off, and then that's where the 2 worlds collide. And then eventually we see what's going on. We end up basically deciding to stand with the locals and help take back the town. So it's a fun ride. I think it's one that most people are really going to like. We're really, really, really proud of it. And the one thing that we got some initial reactions from some screenings, the one thing that we consistently heard was that they couldn't believe how great the acting was from the pro wrestlers, which, because you say pro wrestlers versus aliens, we already realize the bar of expectations may be set pretty low. So hopefully we really pleasantly surprise a lot of people. There's a lot of really great working professional actors in this movie that really helped, I think, elevate our performances, and I think we helped elevate theirs. Some like Julia Denton, who's the female lead in the film, amazing actress. She's worked opposite Paul Rudd, Jennifer Aniston, and she's just a strong presence in the film. The guy who plays the kind of shady promoter is an amazing actor named Adam Narvitz, and if you're a fan of The Walking Dead, which millions and millions of people are, they'll remember Adam. He played the role of Ed, which is Carol's abusive husband in like the first couple of seasons of The Walking Dead. And I always say when I show people his face, they go, "Oh man, yeah, man, he was a real jerk." But sometimes they use a lot more, specific words than that. but in this movie, he's got great comedic timing as an actor, and the audience gets to see that a lot too. So, and then Mark Ashworth, who amazing actor, played opposite of Denzel Washington and Chris Pratt in the remake of The Magnificent Seven. So, I mean, we had the level of acting in the film is really good. The level of special effects is really good, and mainly it's a great story with a lot of layers. And what I mean by that is there's, like I said, there's the pro wrestling, there's the sci-fi, there's the relationships that we really concentrate on that. There's another layer is that we really worked hard to preserve the magic of professional wrestling, the suspension of disbelief, without insulting people's intelligence, And so that's one of the things we were really big on. We didn't use a lot of industry insider terms because your average wrestling fan, who just turns on and watches wrestling doesn't know all that stuff. So we didn't want to, put in a bunch of stuff that might be confusing to the general viewer. And then also there's even the makings of a romance in the movie too. So it's, if you can imagine throwing all that together and making it make sense, that's what we did.
Well, let me ask you this one here, because, all right, fans at home, I could tell you right now. So Larry Zybsko, a personality that and he could talk. No one ever denied that. Same with Ernest the Cat Miller, right? So Ernest the Cat Miller, very flamboyant. Both those guys are in the movie. That doesn't shock me at all. What I want to know, what I need to know, is how in the world did you guys convince Haku, King Tonga, Meng to do this?
Well, you know what? We actually met, all three of us, Luther, Tonga, Fafita, and myself. We all met back in our WCW days, and eventually became not only friends, but really, really close friends. Tonga and I have developed a really, really strong bond. I mean, a family level bond, and he's someone I truly, truly love as a person and a friend. And way back when even we were with WCW, he did some stuff with the Mortal Kombat TV series that was on TNT back during WCW, and he just got the acting bug, and he wanted to do more, so when Luther and I set out to write the role for him, everybody knows the legendary stories of him and how tough he is, and they're all true, trust me. But the one side that we get to see a lot, and this is once again going back to the side of the wrestlers that the audience doesn't normally get to see, is on the other side of the coin is, he literally is the kindest, most gentle, most giving person that I have ever known. And I'm saying that, I'm not just saying that to pump him up. he really is. He's the guy that, with literally, you hear people say a lot of times, we give you the shirt off his back. He literally would. He's very big on family. He's very big on it. If you're a friend, you're family, and he takes that very, very seriously. And we wanted to show the world that the people that love wrestling and know him, we wanted to show them that side. So in the movie, like I said, you definitely get to see him throw some kicks and punches and do some great wrestling, but you also get to see a side of him that's the very kind, gentle, family man that his character, that he is in real life, but that also his character is. And I think people are going to really, really be blown away. When people see the pictures of him with a gun, they're always like, well, Tonga doesn't need a gun. But well, just watch the movie and you'll understand that you get an equal balance of him, doing stuff without the gun, but then you get some pretty cool stuff with him doing the guns, which using the guns. So yeah, it's just one of those movies that no one's ever really attempted before. We always say, if you want an example, if you want a vision of what this movie is, it's the Magnificent Seven, or a modern day version of that would be the Expendables meets They Live. Luther and I are very, very big fans of John Carpenter. Every wrestling fan pretty much loves They Live with Roddy Piper,
right?
And so we wanted to make a movie so we know the sci-fi audience and the wrestling audience are one that's kind of intertwined. So we figured, why not make a movie that celebrates both those audiences and put it in one film? And so that's why. And obviously we looked at it too, like if we're going to be battling, some presence. It's just, zombies has kind of been done to death. And we just figured, what? Well, no, it'd be pretty cool. You put pro wrestlers battling aliens who, maybe had a little bit of the superhuman strength, and the playing field gets leveled a little bit there, So, and I will say this: there's a lot of great lines in the movie. There's a lot of great, what I call Easter eggs in the movie that really are tips of the hat to some stuff in the wrestling world, and there's a lot of nostalgia in the movie. We actually made the movie in kind of an 80s sci-fi, action thriller type, kind of look, because we wanted it to be kind of a timeless look, and we wanted it to be a little one that, it has a little sprinkle of some camp in there just to make it kind of, once again, a fun ride. But yeah, it's just the type of movie that I hope people will come out of it after watching it saying, wow, I really enjoyed that, and recommend it to somebody else to watch, or sit down and watch it again with some other friends who haven't seen it or whatever. Because I will say this, there's a lot in the movie where you might not catch the first time. So because like I said, especially some of the Easter eggs. So it's definitely I always recommend watch it one time and just enjoy it, and then go back and see what little Easter eggs you might can catch in it, because there's several in there.
Oh, I'll be making a list, I assure you. But let me ask you this one too then. So, all right. Now, we all know, okay, so this movie, guys, it's easy, it's quick. It's an hour and 26 minutes, right?
Yeah.
So, you could literally watch on your lunch break and a little bit after work. It's simple. But, okay, I know this for a fact. I've had enough people on the show to know these types of things. Usually, when they film a movie, even a movie that's 90 minutes long like this one is, it's usually 4 hours. So you have 4 to 6 hours of film, right, that you have to cut and edit, and I'm telling you what, that might even be conservative. It's probably more than, way more than that. So my point is, though, I need to know, did the DDP part make the final cut?
Well, the short answer is yes, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. But yeah, I'll tell you the funny things. We shot several hours of film because of principal photography, and then having to come back and actually, the blessing and the curse of the taking time off of the pandemic was it gave us a chance to go back and kind of review what we had shot and kind of see what worked and what we felt like maybe didn't work. So we went back and retooled the script a little bit more, and it gave us an opportunity to adjust maybe some of the scenes that we hadn't shot yet, and so that really worked in our favor. But yes, as far as Dallas's scene, it is, the funny thing is, it started off as a pretty long scene, and originally the whole scene was in there, but then we started looking at it, time wise, and just the pacing, and so we ended up shaving some of the scene out of it, and we kept what we felt was the very best of it. And in the end, I think people are really going to enjoy it. It's still a scene that's several minutes long, and the setting is where that Dallas plays. His character is pretty obvious to the audience when you start to see the scene that he's like kind of a mentor to me, like a big brother type character, and he's giving me some advice about stuff. And I will say, watch that scene close, because there's something that happens in that scene that really is a huge piece of the final puzzle of the movie. So I won't say any more than that. But there's, but yes, the one. It's a great scene that for DDP, but I honestly think it's certainly one of maybe the most pivotal scene in the whole movie. So yeah, that's the other thing too, Vince, is we really, really, really worked on just forming what we felt was a really good story. Because a lot of times you make action movies like this, and you can tell right off the first 2 minutes, okay, this is the basic story of you're going to get this, 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 and this, and they're just going to throw in different actors and different action scenes. But we really tried to make a movie that even if you took all the action out of it, you still have a really good movie as far as just the story. And I think we really hit the mark there. I'm really anxious to get the feedback from the people who watch it, and hopefully, I believe it all will be pretty positive. I mean, once again, this movie is made. Our target audience is the pro wrestling fan, and of course the sci-fi fan. So if you're one of those two or both of them, then this movie was made specifically for you. We made a movie that we want to sit back and go, yes, I think we'd enjoy that movie, And but yeah, our first editor that worked on the film, the original first run of the movie was 2 hours and 35 minutes long.
Yowzers.
So we ended up, and of course we kept cutting and not, because we have one general rule you have to follow, and this is being what we learned as producers, is one general rule to follow is, when you're thinking about cutting something out or keeping it in, does it move the story along?
Right.
And it can be a great scene, but if it really doesn't move the story along, then as one of our people that worked on the movie would say, if you're on the fence about it and it doesn't move the story along, you got to cut it out, and the audience will thank you for it.
Well, here's a great point to that, right? So Seinfeld, and by the way, I'm an 80s child. I was born in 82. I'm an 80s kid. So when you said this is an 80s movie, I'm so hyped for that. But here's another good one. So Seinfeld, to me, is one of the greatest television shows of all time. Best sitcom. Absolutely loved Seinfeld. Every Seinfeld episode was 22 minutes long, and it could have been 90. I mean, almost everyone could have been a movie because it was that damn good. But like you said, it could be the greatest scene ever, but if it doesn't move the story along, I'm really glad you said that, because as someone who's written 14 books, and I'm not saying that to pat myself on the back, even though it
I'll pat you on the back for that.
it probably just made me sound like a giant arrogant ass, like tell this guy to shut up. But I mean, as somebody who has written 14 published books, I could tell you that, there's some of the best stuff I've ever written never even made published, never made print. Because there's only so much you can put into something. So I gotta tell you one more quick story here, and then I got a wrestling question, because like I said, I knew I had to monopolize. Well, I can't talk today, but monopolize your time with a wrestling question.
High school football.
You have no idea. I went to church this morning and everything. Like, I'm ready to go. But so I got one more question about the movie though, and it's almost like a story. So staying on DDP for a second. People who know me well enough know I am 42 years old, and I did not start this career until my early 30s to mid 30s. I began writing books, then got into the media, then began all this Keon sports stuff about 6 years ago. I'm not going to say hit it big, but hit it pretty good, right? So, DDP was my inspiration for that. And oh yeah. So I was at WrestleFest here in Cleveland. WWE SummerSlam was in Cleveland back in August, and I went to WrestleFest, and I didn't go as a media member. I went as a fan. And, I mean, I paid the ticket price. I didn't care. I wanted to be there as a fan. I didn't want anybody to know who the hell I was. Just wanted to be a fan, right? So I put on my wrestling t-shirt, and I went in. And one of the guys who was there was Diamond Dallas Page Falkenberg. And, I went up to Page and introduced myself and explained to him, how much he meant to me, because anybody who knows DDP realizes he didn't start his journey in professional wrestling to his late 30s. So there's a lot of parallels there. And the amazing thing is he was able to talk to me on the spot, right? Even though there's a line a mile long, for a good 35 minutes. I mean, it was insane, right? So we were having this conversation. It got to the point at the end where there's like tears in his eyes, there's tears in my eyes, because it's like we both shared our journeys with each other. So, my thing is, if you ever want to contact him, I would love to have him on the show, personal favor. I would love to talk to him, because, not only did he help me, but I kind of feel like he's one of those guys, not only is he pushing 70 and he looks like he's in his 30s still, but, he's one of those guys that I feel can inspire anybody just by listening to him speak.
Yeah, and you know what? And he's going to make this story. I owe Paige so much. I mean, my number one favorite quotes, and I have a million favorite quotes. My number one favorite quote came from my college athletic trainer, Jim Madalino, who's now the assistant AD for all the sports medicine and all that stuff at the University of Kentucky. And someone who I just talked to again about a month ago. But he gave me the best quote I've ever heard, which is, it's not what you know and it's not who you know. It's who's willing to say they know you.
Yep.
Who's willing to put their name and reputation on the line for you. And that's what Dallas did for me. But if he would have never done that, Glacier would have never existed. And I would have never gotten an opportunity at the top during the greatest period of wrestling ever. But we had been friends for several years before that. So we're great friends now. And actually, this scene, and I'll make this quick because I know we don't have a ton of time, but just to give you an idea of the kind of friend he is which just says a lot about who he is as a person too. And granted, let me preface this by saying, and I love Paige with all my heart, but Paige can, he could be very demanding too as a friend. But I've never when I say that, meaning that he never demands he's never demanded anything of, not demanded, he's never asked anything of me that he wouldn't or hasn't already done himself. So I just mean that in the most loving way. But he loves, he just says, the progress and growth happens outside your comfort zone, not in it, And so, the scene that we have in the movie was one of the first scenes I had conceived for the movie. I told him about it years before. So when we finally got everything, done and ready, and I called him, and actually he was in Atlanta. He came out to our wrestling school, and we were sitting around just talking. I said, "Hey man, we finally got it, funded and everything. Once I get the, schedule and everything." And I said, we didn't have as far as movie standards go, we had what we thought was a good budget, but it certainly wasn't a studio level budget. And so it was a very limited budget. Let me just say that. And so, I sat Paige down and I said, "Hey, I still want us to do this scene together." And I said, "Here's what I can pay you, man. I know it's not a lot." And trust me, it wasn't anywhere near what his appearance fee would be normally. And of course, and he agreed agree to do it. He said, "Oh, bro, I'm glad. I'd be glad to help. I'm there. I'm happy for you for doing this." And I remember when we shot, he was there for one day. He came in the day before, shot that day, and flew out the next day back to Atlanta. And as our lead producer, Melissa Gruber, was, we were almost through doing this scene that day, and we were breaking for like dinner, I think. And she comes up, she says, "Hey, Mr. Page, I want to make sure I get with you before you leave, and cut you a check because you're here just for the day, blah blah blah." And he said, she's trying to get the information right, like, "Can I blah blah blah?" And just Dallas looks right up at her and just says, "Yeah, I'm not here for the money, doll." Like, and it just, for me, it said everything about our friendship, because, he basically was like, "Here's my address, send it whenever you want, whatever, I'm not here because of that, and it just, reinforced the friendship relationship we have, and so many people, Tonga, Ernest, Stan Hansen, Larry Zybsko. I mean, these guys, Gangrel, David Heath. I mean, they all came in as a huge favor to us, to Luther and myself. They all command a lot more money than what we were able to give them for this film, but they were there because they believed in it, they believed in us, and I do feel that does come out on camera. You see that. I mean, this group is a very good group that works together, and really, I mean, it was hard. I mean, a lot of hard work to put this together, but because we all work so effectively as a team and a group and a unit, that made it so much more worth it in the end. It really did, because to see them step up, and I mean, like, we shot the last half of we had, I think, close to 30 days of filming originally, and principal photography, and almost half of that were night shoots, because we shot, all the action in the third act happens at night outside, most of it, and we're all aren't in our 20s anymore, which was even back then is hard enough to stay up all night. but night after night after night after night, call time was 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And then go home or go back to the hotel where we all were staying, catch a few hours sleep, come back and do that over and over and over, and be on your game. And so we couldn't have asked for a better commitment from those guys and girls, and it was, and that comes across in the movie. It really does. I think you feel that camaraderie that we have that's very real. You feel that in the movie.
Well, there's two things about Larry Zybsko that I always think about: coffee and golf. So obviously there was a lot of coffee on that set. Did he get a chance to play golf?
You know what? Well, actually, the scene where I go, because if anybody's seen the Magnificent Seven or even the original Expendables, that there's whoever the leader of the group is, like in the original Magnificent Seven, it was Yul Brynner, and he goes to recruit his team. So we kind of followed that formula of I go to recruit each member of the team. So when I go to recruit Larry, his character is, and most of the guys on the main team group, we kind of made little semi-autobiographical type characters just because their real story's pretty cool, So Larry's character in the movie is called Legend, and we just simply call him Legend, and he's the guy who's the retired world champion who did well with his money. He lives in this nice gated community. He plays golf all the time, and so when I go to recruit him, I drive up in a golf cart and he's practicing his putting, But my favorite line from Larry during the whole filming was typically he would ride with Luther to the sets during the day, and we had a great wardrobe person who'd been doing this for over 40 plus years, named Beverly. She was amazing, and her assistant Armando, we had almost 40 different characters in this movie, so you can imagine doing wardrobe for all of those people. And so Armando, we developed all a great relationship with him, but Larry really came to like him a lot. And so every day when Larry would get out of the car, he'd have his cup of coffee, and he'd already grab a cigarette, and he calls take a health break. But every day he would get out of the truck, he'd walk in. As soon as he shut the door, he'd just go, "Armando, I'm here." Basically, like, I need my wardrobe.
And it's funny too, because it's like people don't realize that so many of these guys actually have a personality. And I remember the first time you were on my show, not even the first time you were on my show, but the first time we spoke, because again, take the fans behind the scenes a little bit. We actually had 2 or 3 conversations on the phone before you ever actually came on the show. Because we were waiting and waiting and waiting, so for it to be done. But anyways, long story short, and I was like, man, for a guy they never let talk, I'm like, he's a hell of a talker. Like, they really missed the boat. But
well, and if I could go back and do anything over, I wish, Terry Taylor always campaigned for me to be able to talk and cut promos as Glacier, and I never really would, but I was able to show it when I showed that other layer of my personality as Coach Bud Stern. So.
Yeah, and that was the wrestling question I'm going to ask here in a second. But before I do, gonna throw this out there for you. Not only do I need you to get those other guys on the show, man, give them my information, but
absolutely.
All joking aside, although I'm not joking, that's real. But no, all joking aside, if you ever come to Ohio, you have to call at least one high school football game with me. Sound good?
Absolutely, man. I would love that. I haven't done that in a while, but I would love it. So
sweet. I'll do the play-by-play, and you can be my caller.
Yeah, and maybe a lot of people may not know. I was a former teacher and coached a lot of high school football, and coached in Valdosta, Georgia, taught and coached in Valdosta, Georgia, which has a legendary high school football program, and actually was a part of a state championship team under Coach Nick Hyder, who was a legendary high school coach, especially throughout the Southeast. So yeah, I know, and I grew up. I mean, football was my life before I got into pro wrestling. I mean, so I love football. I love talking about it. I love watching it. So as you and I were talking about earlier, high school football is my favorite level to watch.
Yep. Oh yeah. So last question for you here, and thanks again for coming on the show.
Man, thank you, bro.
You have an open ticket. You have anytime you want to come on, you just tell me. I'm not gonna make the list, but we've easily had over 200 professional athletes on the show, and I would probably put you easily top 5. You're up there with guys like Al Snow. As far as like athletes who are articulate, right? I mean, I'm not going to bash anybody, but I will say this: we had a guy like Ricky Morton who was terrible, and he went over an hour, and it was like he self-promoted the entire time, and I'm like, man, come on! I'm like, we're trying to get something more out of you than a promo, But then we had other guys like Tom Pritchard who were amazing. So. We've had guys over the years where I was like, man, I'm like, they should write a book. I'm like, again, Al Snow, yourself, Tom Pritchard, Sean Mooney of all people. Like, no, here's this announcer from the 80s. The guy was brilliant. I mean, he was excellent. So, honestly, open ticket. So, here we go. So, I told you I was going to monopolize your time at least once with a wrestling question. The last time you were on the show, we covered your entire career as Glacier, and we covered Buzz Stern a little bit. But it was really more so about your wrestling career, because when I have a guest on the show, I try to keep it 100% about them. So, but I do have a question that isn't about you, but it's something that I've wondered for a few weeks. So I'll make this quick. So fans, growing up for me, all right, we never had cable. My family was poor. I'm not getting into the whole story. So I went over to my friend's house, and we would watch WCW, and we would watch Monday Night Raw. Right, but it was his control, right? So he was more of a WWE guy, but we'd still watch both. And then right in, I'd say, like the summer of '99, when WCW got really bad. No offense, but it became. I mean, you know where I'm going. So it became almost unwatchable at times. It just wasn't good. And my friend would only watch WWE. So there is a segment of WCW Monday Night Nitro that I had never seen, and that segment is probably from I'm going to say the beginning of October, so the beginning of October of 99 through the end of 99. So I had a little bit of time on my hands, and I started binge watching that segment, right? And what that is that's the Vince Russo segment of him coming in for that first time of, again, October of 99 through the end of that year. And I have to say, I absolutely loved it. And I was stunned because for all these years, I've read all this stuff about how Vince Russo came in and killed WCW. The guy gets so much blame. But you were there, right? So I'm just curious, when he first came in, what was the excitement level like? But then how long did it take people to realize, you know what, maybe it wasn't him that made WWE good, maybe it was McMahon overseeing him?
You know what? There was so much that I think I can speak for at least everyone that was in my circle, and my circle was all the guys that we actually called our group the FOP, the Friends of Paige, because we were, and it was me and Zybsko, Kidman, Canyon, James Mitchell, who was James Vandenberg, Kanan's manager, Mortis's manager, and Big Ron Reese. So and there was several others, but just the gist of our group. But we were all hopeful, honestly, Vincent, because we wanted it to be good, and so our first impulse was to okay, it's sometimes change is good. Let's see what he brings to the table, and and it just personally, a lot of what I saw was there was a lot of great ideas thrown around, but it was just seemed to be there was where things would get started and then all of a sudden they would just abruptly stop.
Yeah,
and that to me, you can't build if that's your foundation, then it's shaky from the start. So, and it's just me personally, and this is just me personally, this is reflected in our film here, and me and Luther both, is that I was not a believer in that, you had to go raunchier and all edgier like that to get a better product. And I know that Vince Russo had come from WWE, where the Attitude Era, where that had was working really well for them. But it just wasn't something that during that time, like I had a nephew who's grown now, but he was pretty young back then, and my twin brother, had to basically start taping the show and then just showing him when I would be on, just showing him my segments, because our show started to be the same way. And I just felt like that's shock value stuff that may endure for a little bit, but what really does endure is good quality entertainment, and that's really what you saw happen. I mean, it went through a phase, and there were a lot more elements there, and a lot more parts of that story that came into play where Vince left, and then Eric came back in, and so it was just for me and my circle of friends that I remember is that we just want a good quality product, and it felt like I just remember specifically there was one where Kidman and some of the guys were involved, and it was when we were in Vegas and they shot something where they went out to the desert to do, I can't remember what it was at the time.
Barry and Ric Flair.
Yeah, Barry Ric Flair. Yeah, and then it just kind of just stopped. They never went back to it.
Nope.
And it was just kind of like we can't do this. I mean, here I was. I mean, I was a mid-carder at best, and I'm very, very proud of that. But I was not in a position where anybody was necessarily going to listen to my opinion. We still had a bunch of the guys, the top that some were in close with Russo, some were not. But our business is a very ego-driven business, and typically the ones at the top are the ones who have a lot more leverage than everybody else. So so it was kind of like we could voice our opinion on what we thought worked and didn't, but sometimes they listened, sometimes it fell on deaf ears. So that was my whole thing. It's not because I don't want to talk bad about anybody, because I'm only giving my perspective. But my perspective is, I felt like we didn't have to go there, whether it was Russo or whoever. I just felt like we didn't have to go there to do a Jerry Springer type show, because I felt like, there is an audience for that, because Jerry Springer obviously was on TV for a long time. But wrestling was, and this is just me, wrestling was already good with the formula that was there. And I felt like, okay, I understand, tweaking the formula some, but I felt like that was going way too far. And I just felt like that we didn't need to do that, because, edgy like that, now all of a sudden, first of all, most parents just aren't going to let their kids watch that. And then so you automatically cut out a valuable part of your audience, because yes, the parents are the ones who buy the merchandise, but they typically buy the merchandise for the kids, and if there's real shady stuff going on and edgy stuff, most parents aren't going to feel good about buying a t-shirt of somebody to let their kid wear when the person on TV is doing stuff that's not a family oriented thing to be doing. But I'm not saying all that. I mean, listen, there's obviously some people who did, and there are adults that tend to like that. But I always go back to as well, like the Attitude Era, was something that was very successful, but it was only successful for a certain period of time. Mm-hmm. And then what did WWE eventually go back to when they went public? They went back to a PG style formula that they still use to this day. Yeah. And those numbers, you can't argue with those numbers. And it's like, they're talking about going to Netflix, obviously they're going to Netflix starting in January, and they're talking about doing an edgier show. And I've heard other people say the same thing, like, okay, maybe there's some edgier things you can get away with, but if you go too edgy, you're just going to lose part of your audience. For what? I mean, just because it's the old thing, man. It's the old thing that I always say that when I'm training, younger wrestlers, like just because you see it done a lot doesn't make it right.
I mean, and here's the thing too. So, I think you hit a home run when you said there was no follow up, right? So, case in point with the Ric Flair thing, the Hulk Hogan, like it was supposed to be Hulk Hogan versus Sting at the Halloween Havoc that year in '99, and Hogan comes and lays down for 3 seconds and leaves, and then you don't see him again for months. Like, and it was never explained, no payoff, right?
Yeah,
so
that was all frustrating.
That was obnoxious. And so I like the wrestling. I kind of like what they were doing. They started pushing Bret Hart, who's my all-time favorite, and I like him, and I love the Filthy Animals. I mean, so there were certain things that he did, like I said, Russo, that I absolutely loved, and there were other things that I thought were stupid. And it was like, well, I don't know if you need this. Case in point. So again, I grew up in the 80s and 90s. So for me, it was like Macho Man was this big burly wrestler guy, and everybody loved him, but then he was mean to Miss Elizabeth, and but it worked. It worked perfectly because she was sweet and innocent, and he was in fact the Macho Man. So episode 1 of Russo being there, I always looked at Kimberly Page the same way I looked at a Miss Elizabeth, right? Like the soft, sweet, innocent, wife, loyal, all that stuff. So I mean, night 1, and I'm talking like night 1 of him being on the job, they all out of nowhere, with zero indication this is going to happen, all of a sudden, she's trying to commit adultery. She's in a hotel room in lingerie with she's trying to with David Flair, and it ends up being Ric Flair. And again, there was never any follow up to that. And I'm thinking, like, what the hell? I'm like, you basically just took the woman who was like the face of the female, women there, because they didn't have a wrestling really much going on. And then you took your best female wrestler in Alundra Blaze, Medusa Maselli, who's also been on the show, and you put her half naked up there, and now you don't know what she's doing, right? So it was a time where I was like you guys were, right? Like, you were excited because you're like, hey, here's this new stuff, this might work. But then there was stuff about it where you're like, what the hell is going on? So now I totally get it.
Yeah, and I mean, I always try to say anything about wrestling, because there seems to almost always be exceptions to everything in wrestling, every rule in wrestling. So I always say, as a general rule, you got to pay stuff off, and you do. I mean, that's just kind of a general rule in wrestling. You got to pay it off. It's the same thing. That's why in basically every tag team wrestling match that you see, if eventually during the match, the heels are gonna. They're going to get one of the baby faces down and beat them down pretty good. And eventually, if done right, the hot tag's going to happen, and you get the payoff of the other partner coming in and bouncing the heels around, and then whatever the finish, where we go from there, we go. But there's that tried and true formula of the audience. They want, and they emotionally they need a payoff, some kind of payoff. And every now and then, I will say, like I said, exceptions to every rule. The one time I can think of that they didn't pay it off, but it still did work, was when, and there's probably other good examples that I'm not remembering, but from the 80s when Baby Doll, there was this angle that where she had the envelope was supposedly this whatever negative information on Dusty Rhodes, and she had it in that envelope, and she was gonna she was kind of trying to blackmail him with it. And then during that whole process of that angle at that time, Baby Doll ends up leaving WCW, or if it was still Crockett at that time, I can't remember. But but either way, like that never got paid off. So because the key player in that angle left, So, but if you see Baby Doll do the interviews even to this day, like everybody asked her about the envelope, like what was in the envelope, and she said that Dusty always told her, don't ever tell anybody what was in the envelope, and so like today, like I saw her do an interview a couple years ago where she still has supposedly it's that envelope, who knows for sure, but she says, like, everybody asks me what's in the envelope, she goes, and I'm not ever going to tell. Because if I told what was in the envelope, then there's no curiosity anymore. And that's where they kind of didn't pay an angle off, where it still kind of worked. But it's very hard to do that, and there's a lot more, the percentage of leaving your audience happy, is to pay off whatever you're doing, in some shape, form, or fashion. And that's what I mean. Is a lot of times they just stop something in the middle, they wouldn't pay it off. And when the audience, after a while, if they don't if you don't pay off stuff after a while, and that's in a movie, that's in a TV show, that's whatever, after a while the audience they don't have an emotional connection, so they lose interest, and then it's a lot easier for them to flip the channel, and so. Because that's what we are. At the end of the day, we're great storytellers. So we're storytellers. We hope to be great storytellers.
Well, okay. So one last question for you, because this interview was going to go 7 to 10 minutes, and I'm pretty sure we're on minute 40. I think we're on minute 48. So we might as well go for broke at that.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, when you do a podcast, there's no rules. You're good to go.
Yeah.
No, I mean, we might as well go for one more and, call it a day, but who cares at this point? Honestly, my thing here is this, right? And again, I'll reference it, growing up, 80s, 90s, all that good stuff. I've seen the best of both worlds. I've seen the PG or the golden era with Hulk Hogan, into the Attitude Era, into all of it. And I like AEW. I'm an AEW fan, so this is not to knock them, but they're starting to do a few things now, again, that it kind of reminds me of a Vince Russo type booking, where they're setting people on fire and they're putting a bag over, I still call him Daniel Bryan, but Bryan Danielson's head, stuff like that. And I know rumor is you've been speaking with them and stuff. So,
well, I'm a coach now.
Okay. So you're there.
So, yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
beautiful. So give me some inside scoop on that if you can. I'm not asking you to break kayfabe or anything, but
No.
what? I mean, why? Just why? Why are you guys doing that?
Well, you know what? A lot of times, once again, just coming on as a coach, a lot of that stuff I'm not privy to. That's something that may or may not happen. But it's just at least what I'm seeing is a lot of that stuff's done on the pay-per-view, where typically it wouldn't be just on the network TV. But I know a few things are. Yeah, you know what? I wish I had a better answer, Vince. It seems that I look at stuff like that, and it's not the way that I would personally present it, maybe. But I always try to say, just anything with pro wrestling, if it's done right, there's a big picture there, and what you're seeing hopefully now is to hopefully set up several more chapters of the story, and to get you to tune in to the next level. So yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where some of it may not be personally, what I would do, but I'm learning too. Like I have to try to understand too that there's a different era of wrestling, and I'm in the twilight of my career. I'm not getting in the ring, but just being, and what I bring to the table and the experiences and stuff. It's times when, if they were to ask my opinion, I'd say, okay, well, maybe I don't think we need this or maybe we do this way, So I wish I had a better answer for you. I really, a lot of that I'm seeing when the audience sees it, and it's something that, because I'm not on the booking committee, as I still like to call it, or the creative team, or whatever, is I'm not really privy to it until I see it. So I'm like, okay, well, that's interesting, So, and obviously, I think it's. I will say this: I absolutely love working with AEW. Tony Khan is someone who I really, really admire. I mean, he loves wrestling at a level that I've rarely ever seen. He really does, and there's a passion that every time I see him, I see that passion at that high level, which has just been, something it's a breath of fresh air, and the culture there, in my personal opinion, is awesome. It's very supportive. You hear, you always hear the stories about, there's rumblings backstage. Well, you know what? That's always been in wrestling. There's always been rumblings. Because you know why? Because everybody's got an ego in wrestling. Everybody. So, and that's just going to happen. That's part of the, but I have not experienced a lot of that personally. What I see is a lot of very supportive environment. And I will say this, I mean, I've been out recently, the last 3 weeks, because of, I had a medical condition. I had a little bit of a cardiac scare, and I'm just kind of leveled out now, but I'm getting some testing done, and I had some this week and doing some more next week. And I will say this, as a company and as a leader, Tony Khan is being incredibly supportive of me going through this, and that's something very, very refreshing to see, that the culture of the wrestling business it seems to be continuing to go to even more of a positive atmosphere, because it wasn't always that way. And I mean, like I'm one that, like, I'm the guy who would say that in wrestling back in the 90s, it was still mostly a good experience. I mean, there was, we all this stuff that is a controversial stuff's been well documented. So we don't have to rehash it, but there's and now in the environment, what I see now is, I mean, there are a lot of people there, who love wrestling the way I love it, and you know, in the way, like, you know, QT Marshall, you know, is a VP there, and we're very, very good friends, and you know, just see the way he loves it. I mean, everybody is they're all in. They're all in. They're committed to it 100%, and it's just nice to see that. I don't know if I've come across anybody there who I feel like is just there for a check. You know, I mean, they everybody shows up. They work as hard as they can, and for me, I couldn't ask to be in a better, you know, position as far as a job right now than doing that. So and so, you know, just and you know, listen, I hope that our film does good enough to where, you know, this is our first film for our production company. So Luther and I have started our own production company called Power Plant Legacy Films, as a little bit of a tip of the hat to, you know, our Power Plant experience and the people that really helped mold us in wrestling and personally and professionally. And you know, if this one does well, we're certainly planning on doing more films. So that's why I ask everybody, definitely go out and support the film. If you love wrestling the way we love it, I promise you, this movie is going to be a good, fun ride for you. If you know somebody who loves wrestling, please tell them about the film and share maybe a link or something. And if it's okay, Vince, I'll give the link to the website. So okay, it's pretty. It seems like a little long at first, but just I'll just say it a couple times. It's the Unbreakable Bunch movie.com. So it's the Unbreakable Bunch movie.com. And if the one thing I really ask everybody is go check the website out, because there's a really great highlight video that runs as soon as you get to the website, and it will give you a lot of the great scenes in the movie, the wrestling and the sci-fi scenes. And I always say that if you watch the trailer, and of course you can watch it's a 1-minute trailer, you can watch it on YouTube under just the Unbreakable Bunch movie, our page. I always say, if you're on the fence about whether you think you might like this movie, or if there's maybe something in the movie that you don't think you know, it's maybe too much for you, watch the trailer. And here's my promise to you: if you don't see anything in the trailer that offends you or thinks is a little bit much, I promise you it's not in the movie. You know, and there's a couple little, you know, I would say kind of jump scares in the movie, but like I said, we did them in a way that was more that 80s style sci-fi action, maybe little B-level movies that I think people will really, you know, get a kick out of. So as a whole, if you want to get a really good idea of the film, just go to our website. All of our information is there, as far as you can see the trailer there, but you can see all of our links for our social media. Just look for any social media, which is Instagram, Twitter, any of that. It's just the Unbreakable Bunch, which is Facebook, and we're trying to post, you know, at least a couple times a day to keep people updated. But everything it's available starting today, November 1st. So you can go to Prime Video or a lot of the other platforms we mentioned earlier. But yeah, please check it out. Please support it, because once again, we made this movie for you, the pro wrestling fan who loves wrestling the way we do, and by your showing support for it, hopefully it'll give us an opportunity to keep making some movies similar to this.
You guys knew him as Glacier. I just know him as my friend Ray. Excellent job again today. We really enjoyed having you on. Hopefully I didn't get you in trouble with your new employer there by asking you that question. Leave it to me to put my foot in my mouth. All good. But, you know, the funny thing is there's a picture of you that often comes up when I click on my internet. It's usually like MSN.com or something, and it says like wrestling legend joins AEW. And it's a picture of you, and I'm not knocking you by any stretch, but like I also know that with the way it works with Google Analytics and everything, is they tend to put you know, clickbait, right? They put a lot of fake stuff up there to try to get clicks for advertisements. So I just stopped clicking on it. And but I remember the first time I read that, I'm like, oh, cool, he's with AEW. And then it was so long ago, it was probably a good 6 weeks ago that I first saw that, where I was like, I meant to ask you, then I never got around to it. Then it kind of clicked in my brain. So all that aside, though, man, we are psyched for your new movie. We want to wish you the best of luck, and you know, thank you again for coming on the show today.
Oh, thank you, Vince. And yeah, and I'm typically a pretty private person. I don't post a lot of my personal stuff on social media, so I did not make any announcement that I was going to work for the AEW. I started in June, and you know, even the medical issue, I've talked about it on a few podcasts now, but it's you know, it's not anything I made a post about, because you know, it's just one of those things where I try not to put a lot of personal stuff out there. But because I'm doing like your show and some other ones right now, there's a reason why I'm not traveling. That is just to kind of get this taken care of, So it does afford me the opportunity to be able to do stuff like this, which I love. So, and I just can't thank you enough for having me on and for just taking the time to promote the film, man. I really appreciate you.
Oh yeah, no problem at all. And if it makes you feel any better, I'm wearing an AEW hoodie as we speak, and went to the show Wednesday night here in Cleveland. So I am a huge fan.
Good.
I am a huge fan.
Good.
So absolutely, we're gonna wish you the best of luck. We'll keep you in our prayers. I know cardiac stuff is never fun. It's always a little scary, but you seem like you're in pretty good shape. So we're gonna keep in our prayers. We're gonna let you go now though, because we want to go watch that movie, and we just keep talking, right? We're too, I'm pretty sure you're not telling me that you might be Italian, because I'm talking with my hands as we speak. I cannot see you, but I'm willing to bet you're doing the same.
I do the same, yes, all the time. And my fiance Veronica laughs at me all the time because I talk with my hands. So, but yes, I'll just remind everybody, if you want to get more information about where to find the movie, where it's available, just go to our website, theunbreakablebunchmovie.com. And if you scroll down, you'll see the very big logos of where the movie's available. All you have to do is click on the logo, and it'll take you right to the site. And I can't thank Robert McLaren enough. He's our web guy. He's a very dear friend of mine, but he's been down at Dallas Page's web guy for well over 10 years. And he does an amazing job, and he's just given up his time to help us because he believes in this project so much. So our website looks great only because we have somebody who's a true webmaster doing all this because he believes in the project, and we have tons of people that are on board with us because they simply believe in the project. So please support us. I promise you it'll be a fun ride if you watch the movie, and please share the information with anybody who loves wrestling. Hopefully they'll want to watch it as well.
Okay, fans, here is how we're going to end this show here. Before I hit power off and end on my phone, I'm going to shut up. I want Glacier here to say the quote one more time, and this time I'm not going to talk over it. And literally, once he's done, I'm going to hit end, and we're going to end the show, and that's going to be it. Because this quote by his coach, I put it as my Facebook status. I put it up on Twitter. It's so powerful. I just want you to say it one more time about it's not who you know and so on down the line. Because, guys, listen to this closely. He mentioned it earlier in the show. I feel bad I kind of talked over it. This to me, it literally is the best advice somebody could give you. So I'm going to shut up now, and Ray, you go right ahead.
Okay, thanks, Vince. So once again, my all-time favorite quote is, it's not what you know, it's not who you know, it's who's willing to say they know you. And thank goodness I've had a lot of friends who've been willing to say they know me. A lot of them helped me on this film. Me and Luther, my co-producer. So go out, see the Unbreakable Bunch, and enjoy it, or else blood may run cold on you.